So here we are, moving into the autumn of 1805. The story so far, only really big thing. Austrians have advanced into Italy and Bavaria, Württemberg, whatever, as, no, almost Bavaria, as scripted in this scenario. And Russian troops moving forward. But the big story is Napoleon crossed over into England after a naval victory, but one that didn't last. And the problem with that is, now I'm cut off from supply by an English Navy. If I can't restore supply by the end of this turn, I'm going to start facing attrition. And I can't get back home either. I mean, conceivably I could, if I could clear the channel briefly. Gotta pay a lot of attention to those chits. This is what I'm learning. This is one of the few games where making the crossing in the invasion of England is easy. But once you do it, your job's not done. Another one that is that way is maybe not easy to cross, but possible to cross, is, let me think, Hitler's War, where you have to understand the consequences of your crossing. And in this case, probably should not have made the crossing when I did. I thought things would go better, but it came down to not just the timing of the chits. It wasn't wise to cross on that after that first chit. That's what it really came down to, because the coalition had additional chits, and it's only when you're able to cross on that last chit and still take London that you actually have a fair chance. And that means essentially waiting around for the weather to be good, which was the historical situation, right? It doesn't feel like that because there's no weather involved. It's just these chits and the timing on them. But it actually generates something that has that same effect without it being explicit. Now that can be really, really fucking confusing, right? And I was drawn into the trap of going into Britain. It would be fairly easy to get in there. It was, because the initial setup is not that great for the Brits, and the French were able to take advantage of that and open the crossing. Anyway, that's the big story now. Now we're starting, I guess, the spring interphase. I moved things because I had a book discussion, and I'll be back with another video because I'm giving up RAID, whatever, or trying to. There aren't any public events, no economy in this. Reinforcements. I could build an army. I got to think about that. I don't think anybody's got the troops in place to build an extra one. But the French might want to, because I've actually got a fair amount of stuff back here that maybe is worth it. And I can't consolidate it until I build the army. So I've got to make the decision now ahead of the turn. And I also have the right to reorganize all my leaders, which is a pretty powerful capability. So, you know, Napoleon may end up back in Europe while the Grande Armée is stuck in Britain with nothing it can do. Because honestly, there are plenty of commanders who can command that army well. I don't need Napoleon for that. Actually, the odd stacking rules of this game prevent me from removing Napoleon from command of La Grande Armée. I've got one. They started out overstacked, which I just dealt with by leaving some forces behind. But I've got one step too many for anyone but Napoleon to control now. I definitely should not have sent the whole Grand Army in there. I probably should have sent a decent-sized small force and sent the Grand Armée down. Like, you know, Britain didn't have anything defending it, basically. So it would have been quite possible to defeat him with a reasonable sized, like, six-step force broken off. And Napoleon's force could probably still beat Mack. So this was completely a fuck-up. Completely a fuck-up to invade with the whole force. Well, we'll see what comes of it. But anyway, yeah, I can't even ditch Napoleon out of there. Some of my leaders around, notably Mack's gone and Johann is in place, or John, the Archduke. For the Russians, Alexander gone. There was restriction in the last scenario that you couldn't do this. You couldn't pull army commanders out. You can now. So Kutuzov's in charge, much, much better. Alexander's not good. You know, Austerlitz in part happened because the wrong commanders were in place. You had two emperors there in Francis and Alexander. Kutuzov fell asleep because he didn't like the plan that was being developed, shit like that. And Mack is not as good as John, so, you know, just all kind of shit like that. I am building and paid for an army of the North. It's not very big right now, but I can cluster things together, bring them through Berg, or fall back into France to try to defend. But if the Austro-Russian army gets together, it's not going to be able to handle them. And we hope for the best with the naval situation, that we're able to rescue the Grand Army and defeat Britain. The two kind of go hand in hand now. I got a break. I'm having stomach issues. But it is so weird. Like, I just finished my book, or another book, and I'm realizing why I turned to, like, you know, the addictive computer game. Now, I just didn't count on it sucking me in that far. And now I'm like, not really desiring to play it, but at a kind of a loss of what to do. I have other addictions I can indulge in, there's no question there. But yeah, it's just weird. Anyway, we'll hit the diplomacy phase. Again, probably just some playing around the edges. There aren't a lot of powers available to bring into play that are of any use. This isn't like the two-player game where maybe you could bring Prussia in or something like that. But Prussia could join. They just have that die roll, whether or not they actually get in. I feel like that represents what actually happened. Not that Prussia declared war, because they do, but that Prussia would not have declared war on France in 1806. Like, under any reasonable circumstances in a game. So, like, this creates a way in which they might do it, which is trying to bring them into this Austro-Russian situation. And then they're not able to move. Oh, I'm up here. It's Sunday, getting close to 7 p.m. Still avoiding raid. And I started looking at the diplomacy phase. I hit the Spanish instability. I haven't really talked about this too much, I think. It's a little fucked up. Because there's a particular... So, in the two-player game, or in any game in which Spain is not a player, it has a real effect. I said it didn't have much of an effect in a multiplayer game, but there's something kind of weird here. In a multiplayer game, Spain can break her alliance with a major power as soon as steps from this major power have entered her national territory and the Dos de Mayo event has been played. Aren't they free to make alliances anyway? I I have no idea. Like, why is this rule there? If it was a mandatory alliance or whatever, sure, fine, whatever. But for a regular alliance, come on. Are you saying, is this implying that they don't have agency anymore? Or is it that they do and this maybe obviates a cost or whatever? Again, I could look at the Banania rules, see how they resolve it. But it's yet another situation. This is an unfinished game. Like, the rules don't even hang together, right? And again, maybe the core concepts and the refinements that either Banania or the earlier rewrite of the rules that actually, went off on their own, from what I understand, give you a cool game. Because I think it's close. It's just so pitiful that something would be published and then reprinted, right? Without any attempt to make a reasonable game out of it. Especially in this day and age. But, this is the kind of game that Compass made its reputation for being a shit company on. It really did. It's, the amount of effort that went into putting this together, not to polish it, not to make a workable game out of it, is just insane. Another little silliness. I'm working my way through the diplomacy actions. And look, people are making their rolls. They're not really worried. This is the minor power diplomacy, right? No major power is going on without negotiations having happened earlier. I'll write something if I have, and then it can trigger on the next turn or whatever. But I'm not really too worried about it. Turkey, not really ready to go to war with Austria or Russia, although Russia is the one they'd aim for. But what is the interesting little piece that I got to? I'm getting to this minor power statuses. We get here. The coalition may attempt a diplomacy action against a minor power. Now, that's just one, it sounds like. Allied to France, if this power is part of the continental system and not a satellite state. Now, again, in the multiplayer version, is this allowed multiple times by different powers? And who gets the deciding factor on it? But let's say it's just one. A -1 applies to each French step present in the minor power homeland. A -1 applies to diplomacy attempts by other powers during the current diplomacy phase. I mean, it's always the current diplomacy phase if you're doing an attempt. Now, where this is actually handled into maybe some kind of evidence as to what's going on is here. Sweden is in the neutral box. France spends money, ends up getting it to the allied box. The diplomacy phase, the British player performs when he targets Sweden's spending. Despite the -1 for the just concluded Swedish-French alliance, which to me kind of sounds like you can do this against the French, but you get a slight penalty on the turn in which the French just converted them. I don't know, if it is an alliance action, I'm limited to the coalition. Well, we're looking at the possibility of, hey, we could hit, not Bavaria, because Bavaria is currently occupied. Baden is not, but there's a there's a Baden core in there. But actually, Württemberg, which Austria has a +1 on, so I think we're going to affect Austria rolling. But this might not be the wisest thing because Britain has money and can spend, extra money. So Austria would succeed on 11 or more. Britain could spend to succeed on a 10 or more, but I don't really want Britain to have it. So we're going to agree, and Austria is going to go for it on 11 as the one chance that the coalition has to do this. And how about that? Now I have to figure out if the Württemberg Corps has been built. I don't think it has. Nope. And Austria now has just gained a new ally. And it kind of makes sense in the circumstances that are under play, right? There's a big Austrian army near Württemberg. I could see them switching sides for whatever it's worth. One thing that's really fucked up is this -1 applies to diplomacy attempts by other by other powers during the current diplomacy phase. This is, I guess, part of this exception. But anyway, because otherwise you couldn't hit something that someone else controlled. On the other hand, you could make the argument of it's its own standalone, and it's to indicate that, look, this is to go actually with the players must wait until the last roll of the dice to know the final statuses of the countries, which is what I thought earlier because it seems to fit with that. But anyway, which is that, like, I just convinced a country, now you have one last shot, but you're at a -1. Here's what's fucked up about that. The French, so the coalition, the only person who can get this penalty is the English because of the order of the different nations in terms of, and that's written here, in terms of the order in which the diplomacy steps happen. So this kind of feels like something else, but so like this exception could be a standalone. There's nothing here to indicate that these two are part of that except they follow it. They're not like indented or anything like that. And I wouldn't expect that kind of, precision in the rules in this rule book anyway, but it could go either way, right? But the one above it is a -1 DRM applies for each French step present in the minor power homeland, which might work with either as well, right? Except that, like, you couldn't do diplomacy on a minor power that's got French troops in it. Normally, there are a couple of events that allow you to transit an area or something. Again, I feel like I kind of have to make things up, but this -1 attempts by other powers during the current diplomacy phase fits so nicely into this, doesn't it? And doesn't seem to make a hell of a lot of sense in relation to this part of the continental system and not a satellite state. I don't fucking know. But either way, the Russians managed to grab or to take a chance at Mecklenburg, and the Austrians managed to get Württemberg. And I'm just going to leave it at that. And maybe change the rules as I go, because they're so badly written. Why not? In fact, it's time to make a decision, because if the French want Württemberg, and if this rule applies to that just modified, I'm able to go for it. Now, I have no modifiers on Württemberg. I don't know that it's worth $2 for a roll of an 11, to be honest. So I don't know. There's not much else left. We have the Hanseatic League and Mecklenburg, neither of which are really very valuable to me. We have Egypt, which we actually have a bonus on. But I don't know that I want to commit to, like, supporting Egyptian independence, which is really what it would be, from the Ottomans. And in fact, why aren't the Ottomans attacking it? Well, because they have a modifier and have a chance at getting control of it. So why pay for something that, why pay to attack something that you're going to get eventually? Because the diplomacy will eventually work one would assume. So yeah, I don't know. Diplomacy is not necessarily advantageous. For example, the Brits can go for Mecklenburg. They have a big +2 on it. I don't particularly want to, because that just opens it up to be conquered. So fuck that, right? It doesn't do me a lot of good to have Mecklenburg at this point. It would if I had Hanover, right? And the Hanse is harder. So even though Brits have a ton of money, not interested. The Austrians used up the one coalition attempt that I'm saying that the exception allows. And I'm too disgusted again and heading down. Here it is Sunday night, probably around 9 because it looks like it's just gotten dark. And not completely so. Decided to pull a Chet. Got a winter quarters to open things up. Not great. That's going to shorten this turn. And then a coalition naval. Now, there's only one in there. That means the French are going to have their opportunity to clear a path in the channel if winter quarters doesn't come up a second time. For the rest of... Well, so the Allies are going to want to do what they can to nail things down and prevent the French from being able to take a reasonable shot at the channel. They kind of had that set up last turn, but now they get to really focus a little harder. So the coalition improved its naval situation a little bit, just shifting some blockade stuff around. Got an Empire Land 4, decided I don't want to do anything with that. And then a coalition land, and the coalition went last. Went last in the last turn. A coalition land 1, which allows me to move everything. Well, that was kind of hefty. So what I did was I got myself Baden and Ulm. Should have another detachment kicking around somewhere. Swear I had 2. Oh, there it is. Yeah, that detachment shouldn't go here. I should go to Munich instead. By capturing Munich and Ulm... No, I still don't have Wurzburg. Fuck that. Okay. I need to take Wurzburg to knock Bavaria out. And Bavaria owns something too. They own... The fuck is it? Berg or something? Yeah, they currently own Berg, which is up here and not very easy for me to reach. But anyway, I got my successes against Baden, which is a big deal. Now, does Baden own something? Unfortunately, I can't find that out by looking on Baden. What I have to do is scan everything else here. Baden owns the Palatinate, apparently for the entire game. Yeah. So that's not going to completely fall either. But anyway, we grabbed those, and we also took Mantua. We didn't advance out of Mantua, even though we got it with enough movement points to do so. This is, you know, crossing a river or whatever is kind of a painful situation. And I don't want to give up Mantua. So I figure, let's see what's happening a little bit more, you know, before we push on. In addition, that shouldn't be like that. I see the one arrow and it makes things seem clear. We got the Russians making their move down to reinforce and maybe bring an Austerlitz type combined army into play if we need it, But right now it doesn't feel like we need it, so the Russian army may actually try to operate to capture, Wurzburg and Palatinate, and actually strip miners away from the French while Napoleon's stuck in Britain for some reason. Played enough for my taste right now. Empire 3 chit. A bunch of the French forces gathering the Army of the North up here. It's not enough to face the Army of the Rhine, but it might be enough to threaten some of the hinterland areas like Palatinate or whatever. Well, actually, that's pro-French still. Meanwhile, the Spaniards have pushed and started a siege here at Almeida. Could have been in range to hit Lisbon directly. No real reason to. Better to gather forces. Don't have enough points to buy myself an army, though. And that's a real problem, actually. Otherwise, holding off. Let's try some more chits, I guess. A desperate series of French naval actions. Empire naval actions. Leaving only this Spanish fleet available to still move. Those are not mine. The final attack, actually, after driving away a combined Russian-English fleet, almost missed by 2, managed to knock Nelson out of there, which would have given us the chance, because the coalition naval's already done, to capture Britain. But Britain could choose the fight on option in the hopes of keeping the channel open. Of course, higher costs to any kind of peace conditions if they do that, but a pretty good chance that the French wouldn't be able to conquer them. Well, now they're not going to be able to conquer them this turn again. Just because no supplies, man. A couple more chit pulls here. Not a lot happened. The coalition didn't use theirs at all, I think. The French used theirs to gather some smaller forces up into that Army of the North. Because it's coming close to Charles. Charles could move up and attack it, whatever. It is, I don't know, not real early in the morning, but early. For me, early, like 8 o'clock in the morning on Monday. I'm finding I'm sleeping more. This is one of the great issues with me not having something like work or an addiction or something like that, is that I lay down to read on my beanbags and I sleep. Pretty much anything I do, once I get kind of bored of it, I don't have like that, must keep going, right? The computer game is not just Raid, any computer game, is sort of the cure for that, because I must keep going with that always. Whatever computer game that is, I have to do kind of as much as I can do. Now in Raid you run out after like 12 hours for me. In other games, I might be up for like a day and a half, 2 days, before I realize, I really gotta sleep. It's happened at times, especially in the first blush of addiction in the game. But, I kind of like sleeping. Dreams are as good as anything I have. I just don't do it, and I don't remember enough of them, do enough of them to be worth the time spent sleeping, but After that, the final Winter Quarters comes out. Fair number of chits left. But, nobody really had anything left to do. The 2 naval actions took place. Now we get to do our attrition, which is Napoleon's forces in Britain are going to start suffering. French Grande Armée was way over on the 17 table, being bigger than, you know, any other army in the game. That ended up causing a 2-point loss, so a corps evaporated there. Lannes, who could actually increase my losses with where he is, added another step, or could have added another step, did not. Hit the 50-50 range, even though he's only got 2 steps with him. It's not good to be out of supply. It's going to be worse when we hit winter. Yeah. And look, I probably should have done something with the French army, go smash the English army just for kicks or whatever. But it doesn't really do a hell of a lot. And we got big problems here. Big problems. Meanwhile, you know, while the Grand Army is dissolving, the French are facing other forces. It might make sense to demobilize some of the Grand Army and rebuild it next year. Again, because I didn't need everything in Britain. But conquests. Did we get any? That's a good question. We took Ulm, but nothing else. We took Baden. I think that forces something. Mantua is not worth anything. But Baden, this is a 2-space minor country, which has their own rules, which are not under the minor countries, if I recall correctly. God. There we go. They surrender. The capital city is listed in the diplomacy with the state's name. Yeah, so Baden is going to surrender. The conqueror chooses a province. This could be the minor's capital city or not. It's not next to my national territory, so I can't grab it. I could propose a peace with the major power that triggered the invasion. This is something different. Yeah, I think Austria can't get anything and they have to accept a peace with Baden. That feels like bullshit to me. You know? It really does. God, these peace conditions are not what I'd want. So Baden owns what? I want to say the Palatinate. Yeah. And Austria can't receive the Palatinate in this scenario at this point. And they can't receive Baden unless they own Thuringia. I don't know who owns that. Austria owns it as an ally. That's not national territory. It's an ally without troops, you know, totally fucking useless. Yeah, I don't see anything else that I think might be Austrian territory. Oh, wait. No, Ansbach is next to Württemberg. I am going to just leave Baden in the war because Austria doesn't want that peace. It means that France will get the production out of Baden, not out of the province of Baden, but out of the Palatinate province, and might be able to build a core there or something. But as it stands, I don't think that there's anything that's going to happen in the conquest phase this turn. We are entering the winter turn, and this is interesting. A number of things are coming up. Well, one thing. Got a different cup up here, but this is actually going to be my water cup right now. I'm looking to cut back on tea heavily, along with everything else. Maybe smoking too. I don't know. We'll see. Sort of a regression from the me that could focus more and hold a job and get through school and all that, to me that couldn't do those things. But I've got certain physical problems that I have reason to suspect that way too much tea is one of the conditions, is one of the causes. Okay. So anyway, this is the winter turn, and there's a weird thing here that would never happen mid-game, right? Which is that there's tons of money left here. Now, I can't build troops with that money, but I can build armies. So I'm looking at, in particular, say, Prussia, who has a shit ton of money. They do have an army on the board, but a second army might be worth it because I still have some forces to build up. You know, you don't want to be in the, I don't know. And basically, that money is wasted if I make it to the end of the year. So during this spring interphase and reinforcement, well, during the reinforcements and replacements part, I may be spending and building armies that I don't need. Same thing with Britain. They may build an army in England, although Britain doesn't waste money, so the hell with them, right? Let them hold off until they need it. Austria doesn't have a shit ton of money. Russia has enough money to throw yet another army on the field. Might make sense. Doesn't look like they're conquering anything. Austerlitz didn't happen because the French didn't come storming through. Yeah, just a lot of stuff along those lines. And then we have the diplomacy, which is just really plinking around the edges in this game. I don't know. It is in most of the Napoleonic era games. Like, the diplomacy gets settled out pretty quickly, and there just isn't anything that important out there. We're looking at Egypt. Egypt's important, but really kind of more for Turkey than anything else, and anybody who takes Egypt is almost asking Turkey to go to war with them. You could make the same argument with Algeria, which no one else has a bonus on, so it's pretty unlikely. Because nobody's going to spend money on getting it. Hanseatic League, look, you know, is it an advantage or not? This is the Mecklenburg issue, too. Mecklenburg and Hanseatic League are up here. France could take these, right? So England doesn't want them, though they might if they're looking to inject forces on the continent. But right now, they would just be territories lost, so there's no point in getting them. Does France want them? Yeah, sure, whatever, you know. Maybe. They don't come with troops. They don't come with any economic benefits. So all they do is kind of expand the size of the French Empire. Well, of the French continental system, really. Which can hurt Britain a little bit. Somewhere or another, yeah, this is the port money. So like Hamburg is worth quite a bit. Bremen's worth quite a bit. I'd want these eventually, but You know, taking $5 away from the Brits, does that really do shit? I don't know. If I can get whatever it means to establish the continental system, and I'll go with the Banania rules on that more or less, where I get the cash instead, it becomes a lot more valuable. But right now, and also France, you know, in my experience from the 1792 campaign, they had enough money. Maybe won't if they lose the Grand Army up there. But they had enough money to replace their losses each year. And losses were heavy. The big things that I tended to neglect was rearranging my commanders in each, you know. Look, in springtime, sure. But in each regular season, it feels like a heavy burden to be doing all the time. I don't know, you know, in a way it's kind of realistic not to do it that much, to try to, you know, not to try to optimize where my best commanders are all the time and everything like that. I felt like I had to do it at the beginning of the scenario because I had commanders that were not my optimal choices. And now I feel like I shouldn't really bother because I've done the optimization. I'm going to get very, very little out of doing it mid-year. At the beginning of a new year, it does make sense because new force concentrations are in place, yada, yada, yada. And let's see. I guess that's about it. Okay, so I got through all that kind of bureaucratic stuff, whatever, economic and diplomacy. Nothing really changed. I built armies for Prussia and Russia using up their excess money. France could use an extra, like they have enough money for an extra army. There's not a hell of a lot I can do with that money. If I was in supply, I could buy supply wagons, I guess, up with, yeah, let me buy some supply wagons in France just for the fuck of it, I guess, or engineers if I have them. A few essentially blank draws. Coalition Land 4. Look, Charles doesn't want to do anything. Moore doesn't want to do anything. The Russians were not in a great position to move with their forces. I have a second Bennigsen. There was a reason I didn't want to move him. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, it would require accumulating forces together. Not really appealing. That's with the big coalition 4 thing. Then the two neutrals. Look, Turkey's looking at a diplomatic solution, at least for Egypt and maybe Algeria, and then worry about what happens. And you know, going to war with a minor might end up putting us in the war. We don't really want that driven on us yet because we're toying with the idea of war with Russia, but this isn't the time to do it. France looks like they're kind of on the ropes, and you know, wait until Russia's hurting. And the Prussians don't really have anything that they would want to do if they can. I know they can't leave Prussian territory, but Prussian-friendly territory. But even repositioning doesn't sound all that exciting to me right now. Austria, one thing that I noted, doesn't want to push too hard because they need Saxony, and there's no way they're going to get Saxony without either going to war with Prussia or Prussia losing a war to France, or losing Saxony to France at the very least. Which means we're kind of in this, yeah, we can't get the auto victory. Look, you know, we'll take what we can out of this, but we don't really see the way they get their auto victory is to hold stuff in France like Paris. I don't remember. They had another option too, didn't they? They have to be the ones actually holding it too, which is pretty ugly. Like, their chances are not good. They need Dresden. Now, Munich, Venice, Mantua. They need Paris or Lyon, which means we essentially have to be at war with France. The possibility of getting the Lyonnais department, whatever the Dauphiné is, seems really, really low, right? Might be impossible, actually. But we might be able to give it to Piedmont? I don't know. But anyhow, the possibility of gaining those is just so low, even if it exists at all. And except for while I'm at war with France. Now, I don't want to go to war with Prussia while I'm at war with France. So I just want to play this out, see what comes of it. If we end up in a strong position and we're in an enforced peace with France, hey, maybe it's time to take on Prussia and then worry about, the French situation later. But we can't detach Saxony from Prussia. The way the miners work, the only person you can pull them from is the French. And strangely, that seems to be only if the continental system is in effect, which is hard to determine. It's not like France gets to declare it like they do in Empires in Arms. And I don't know what they mean, because there's so much screwy shit going around that. But I think it is. Another weird thing about that is that miners like Bavaria are impacted by the continental system, even though they have no trade with Britain. Which also feels kind of weird, like that they'd be able to be detached diplomatically. But it may indicate that, look, you're in the imperial period. France is not the revolutionary France anymore. That fervor is gone, and now you're in something else. Something that's harder to argue that there's some sort of ideological bent holding you to it. And it doesn't have the legitimacy of, the monarchies, etc. So we'll do some hand waving there and try to get to whatever argument we have. I guess the only thing that happened of any import was a Empire III movement, and didn't do a lot with it. The Spaniards managed to take Almeida, but without enough movement to make it to Lisbon, so I'm just chilling out there. I could move forward, but I feel like I'm more flexible by being back there. And likewise, I gathered up, I moved a French corps up to Orléans to join the other French corps there. There's not a lot of excitement to that either. But not finding much to do. Anyway, lots of words on little stuff. And I'm going to break because I like breaking. The next shit drawn is a Coalition Land 3. And, it's winter. I got kind of the feeling of, let's plow on, right? So Russians moving forward as the first part of this. Then I decide, okay, let me make the attack in Italy. And I go down and I manage to seize Bologna. But I feel like I have to deal with Messina first. Unfortunately, he intercepts me here. So we're going to have a bridge river crossing as a penalty there. This is also a major battle, so I'm going to kind of focus in on it because I haven't done a major battle in this campaign yet. It's not significantly different, but it's possible some of the card draws are a little different. They increase over time. So like the French army has reached its bonus, so it's got a +1. Which it had in earlier scenarios. I don't think the Austrians get it until the 1809 campaign, the Wagram campaign, but I gotta look it all up and figure that out. Strangely, the Austrians actually don't get theirs until 1813. I figured they got it in 1809 because that Wagram campaign, even though Austria loses the war of that campaign, sorta. I mean, they surrender, right? It was masterfully handled. But anyway, and the army had gone through certain reforms already. This is the Austrian draw. And it looks square. Hey, Grand Charge canceled if force passes a morale check. Grand Charge is a dangerous card. If the French can pull that off, I think they get a +2 for that. But the chance of them having that card is really low. As opposed to that, I have an Echelon, which is a nice +1. And I think I meet the requirements. We're in the Army of Italy here. Pretty much regular forces. Yes, yes, yes. I can throw a secondary commander forward to give me a +1 on the second one of these. That one, I'm going to make my secondary actually. General's Health, and this is one that I don't buy, but who cares because these have so little effect. -1 to the combat value of the enemy commanding leader. If he has a 0, give him a -1 for the leader. His final combat value impacts the morale check modifiers of the force. This is a stronger card, so this is the one I'm going to get to automatically play, and we'll throw the square away. Of course, that's not visible to the French. I'll take a look at theirs. By the way, I was up here just before with tea and realized, hey, I had eaten, and I like tea and a smoke afterwards, and just, you know, it's my standard to just stay with tea. Switch back to water. But if I'm going to be drinking water, especially in this heat, I want 2 bottles of water. Like I would have 2 cups of tea all the time in my fridge, just to keep the to make sure I always have kind of chilled water. So I had to fill another bottle. Pile is not so good. The first one I picked up was Patriotic Enthusiasm. This is not my 1792 territory, so I can just throw this one out. It's totally useless. Then I hit Grand Battery. +1 if it has at least 8 artillery points. Well, a quick count says it doesn't. I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for the army. Okay, another one useless. And we're running out of cards now, right? This doesn't usually happen where, you know. Okay, next one I got was Morning Fog. Neither side may use their artillery points. Probably worth doing if I don't have the Grand Battery requirements. I'm probably outgunned. But then Flooded River. Hey, he crossed the river. That's great. Consider the river crossed with an engineer unit by your opponent as unbridged. This doesn't help. He crossed on a bridge. So, yeah, I'm getting the -1. The flooding isn't going to help against a real bridge. So all I'm going to play is the auto-play artillery fire. Got myself a new sheet of paper because these major battles, I feel like, at least for them, I need to write down more probably. I'm not positive, but probably. The lack of a 3-2 modifier in this really bothers me. I feel like 50% more forces should be a significant change. We're just shy of that. The Austrians have 14 steps, the French have 10. This is not as big a battle as some. But anyway, working my way through, right? Well, that first round of combat ended up in a tie, 3 points each. The modifiers were +6 to +5. The French had a tiny little advantage. That advantage is going to wear away in a couple of places. I got the interception advantage at +1, and I got the river advantage at -1. On the other hand, the cards went against me for the most part, I guess. Not sure. I guess they did. But I'd also be facing the General's Health here, and I do believe these cards get replayed on another round. I have to check that. So I think I'm going to fight another round. It's hard to choose to do so in a way because I feel like, look, the French have already expended the Grand Army up there. They've wasted it. They lost it. They're going to have to rebuild forces. So casualties are more easily taken by the Austrians, who have most of their forces on the board at this point. But on the other hand, yeah, I'm actually giving up the cav advantage too. Like, I don't have the cav advantage, but I'm going to drop from a +1 cav advantage to a +2 cav advantage for the Austrians. So we're talking about like a 3-point swing minus the cards. If I get lucky with the cards, yeah, I have 4 to his 3. It's better. I guess we should take the leader loss checks and then make a decision based on that, because I have a +2 leader on the line as well. Wow, and the Austrians have 2 +1s. Let me keep going and think about, because I think the French may want to give this fight up. The problem with that is there was something that goes wrong if I lose Lombardy, and I got to look at that too. Maybe I'm thinking of the last scenario where Napoleon was in Egypt and basically gets dismissed if Italy falls. And Milan was the key to that whole situation. So like if Milan had fallen, I think Napoleon would get removed from the game in that one. Didier Jourdan was wounded. I have no other +2 leader, so that's pushing it way beyond the limits as far as I'm concerned. I pulled away with the French. They would have had to get pretty unlucky to be demoralized. I don't know how big a deal being demoralized is, because you can run away for free. It's not like... See, the thing is, it feels like it should be like Civil War, where if your army gets demoralized, it can just get pummeled on, because there's modifiers for a demoralized army in here somewhere. -2 in here, -4 in the rule book. Which one's right? I don't know. There is something that says the charts and tables are right when the rule book isn't, so I went with that. But yeah, it was kind of a... Gosh, that's... yeah. They may not have modified this. This was supposedly modified. Couldn't catch up and get the 2 in alignment. Okay. But anyway, especially if this was the correct one. But again, it doesn't seem like the errata actually ever made it in, even though they put extra wording in to say it did. But Milan did fall after that. And now I got to look around. I still have, not Mac, John up there ready to push into France. But again, Austria's not all that gung-ho about trying to push this victory, because they don't get the auto victory out of it. Beating France might be nice, but I'm not that heavily focused on it. Yeah. So the only other thing worth doing is to march up and take the Palatinate, because Baden and the Palatinate combine as a single country. Now I can conquer completely and take Baden on in the winter conquest phase as a minor country. Bavaria I can't do yet. Russians have to take Wurzburg still, and Munich isn't covered yet. This guy's not, Louis here, is not able to move on this 3 movement, and he wasn't on the 4 either, both of which I wanted to do him. Russians could take it, and then I don't know who ends up with Bavaria as their conquest under those circumstances. But we don't have Berg yet, which would complicate things. Bavaria could be absorbed into Austria, actually. I think leaving Berg under the Wittelsbachs somehow, and who knows what the hell happens later, but I don't know. I'm kind of pooped after doing that much. It's easy to wear me out. Water is not invigorating me any more than tea did, but it's also beginning to get fucking hot up here. It's supposed to hit 95 today, and this is way up in the eaves and is not pleasant. So I may end up, it's supposed to be hot tomorrow too, not quite as hot, but I may end up like playing something light downstairs or something if I can't do this. Or just like yesterday, sleeping more and fucking around and whatever. Quite a few chits in a row. I did little things with them, you know, like shifting forces up into the Italian theater, pushing up into here, just some little stuff. Nothing that's really, you know, all that noteworthy. I guess the siege here that's underway. Don't want to do forced marches because it's winter and they're particularly ugly then. And then we came up with the Empire Naval. Now I wanted this to come up last in a round, but there aren't a lot of chits. There's as good a chance as, you know, the winter quarters coming up as the coalition naval, so I took a crack at it. I didn't attack with all my ships, but damn near, and got myself into a position where, yeah, it was obvious the last couple of ships up here, actually no, here I think, which are sort of my best fleet, weren't going to be able to take a crack at things because this fleet's already been used. Everything else is pretty much sunk. The Empire is really in difficult straits here. And oopsie. You know, and again, I could have sent, you know, six steps in there and it would have been enough to take Britain and not risk this entire early part of the war. The thing is, Napoleon did have his whole force prepared to go in to take England, but it's not necessary, and it was just fucking stupid. But that's okay. Fucking stupid is what I like to do in this game, it seems. And that very next shit is indeed the winter quarters, which means we suffer winter attrition here. Just make sure. That happens before Conquest. Cool. Conquest is going to be a little complicated because Bavaria is still not fallen, but I think Baden has. And, yeah. And just things are going to be weird. You know, it always is a pain to address that because it involves looking shit up and everything. But let's take a quick look at the attrition. So the Grand Army should be at like 17 steps still, right? No, it's lower. 2, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 steps. Now, it might have made sense to move back and collect up Laon, but then I wouldn't be in London when I needed to, and winter quarters could come up and whatever. So I'm here, and let's just take a look. +4 for winter. Make it +3 because of movement points. +7 for out of supply. +5. Not good. That puts us to a 15. That's going to be 3, one of which is cavalry. Those modifiers, that +5, that's all the same for Laon. The only difference is he's on the 2 to 3 chart. I could spend the supply depot, but I need that if I'm going to get away with, like, this attack. So that's a 16. He ends up losing a step. Noticed I screwed something up in the prior games. Reinstating a minor, starting with the conquest and peace phase of the current winter turn. Oh no, in the current. Okay. Yeah, no, I did it right. I thought it said next and whatever. All right, so right now, Bavaria, I believe, is fine. Baden, okay, Württemberg has been conquered and we already moved that over. That was fine. That shouldn't have happened until now, actually. Doesn't matter. It didn't have any effect on anything. But Baden is also conquered at this point. And we can shift that to being one of our allies. I believe because of the way we conquered it, let me check. The invader must accept this peace proposal. That's what I had wrong, but they couldn't take anything and they wanted to keep occupying, so it didn't make sense that they had to accept it, right? It just didn't. I wasn't allowed to take Baden. I wasn't allowed to ally with them. I don't know. Like, there was just no option that worked. So what I'm doing is I'm going to give Baden over fully to Austria. At some point or another, somebody's going to take Palatinate from them. I don't know why France doesn't have them yet. Certainly I had no problem getting that in my 1792, but maybe historically there wasn't a drive in the center the way there was in my French game. Anyway, I'm saying that Baden has switched sides, which moves this over here. Technically, I'm probably cheating in favor of Austria. Like, I think Baden should have surrendered and just become a non-combatant. But that's bullshit. You know, my army has to be able to get through, right? And I'm not allowed to absorb it because I don't own, as part of my national territory, anything adjacent to them. It's not built to allow for that. And I think Palatinate is supposed to be stripped off by the French or whatever. Anyway, we're just going with this because, again, I don't think the Austrians should have been shut down because they took Baden. That just feels like garbage to me. Their whole conquest would have been shut down. I think that's the Lombardy. Okay, what happens with Lombardy? So first we have to figure out what Lombardy is. At this point, Lombardy is part of Italy. Italy's got special rules that deal with it. I think it can be stripped apart piece by piece. So Romagna and Lombardy are going to be ripped out of Italy. And I'm wrong. Venice can be added to Italy in this, yeah. So yeah, I was incorrect. Lombardy and Romagna are still part of Italy, but Italy has not fallen yet, is I guess the key point here. It's a minor country with more provinces. Let's just make sure what's up with that. When their capital city, alternatively, the major power that controls the minor power can propose a peace. Yeah, I don't think I'm allowed to conquer parts of a minor except by conquering the minor. And conquering all of Italy, see, now this is bullshit too, because the Kingdom of Italy ceases to exist when all its component entities have been conquered by an enemy coalition. Conquering means not occupying. But these aren't minor countries. These are the minor country with one province. I really don't know whether I should be stripping these from Italy or not. I think the fact that they say Italy can be, that the provinces are conquered, I go back to what I thought it was before, which is that Lombardy and Romagna are now part of Austria. And are they? Well, that's a good question. Let's look at what they qualify as. We know Lombardy is a free area without stuff, without troops. And Romagna is, I think, yeah, Romagna is just a province. So no matter what, Romagna, because I own Venice, if we look on here, Venice is no longer a free state. It is part of Austria. Because I own Venice, Romagna gets absorbed as well. But Lombardy is in the same position. They don't have any military units. They're adjacent to Austrian territory, so they get added to Austrian territory. So now Austria has added to the territories that it has within Italy. And that will increase Austrian revenues. And I think manpower as well, which is really a powerful addition as opposed to, like, I mean, Romagna just adds money. Lombardy adds money and troops, but in earlier scenarios, keeping Lombardy, Austria had to keep Lombardy more or less as a minor power, because the way the minor power conquest works, when a minor power with troops is conquered, it doesn't get destroyed, right? Which means there would be no way for Venice or Switzerland. There would be a possibility there. So actually, no, Lombardy could have been conquered by the Austrians because Tyrol inches into it. Sort of, kind of. I don't know if it actually does. Yeah, it does because of the Mantua here. Okay, yeah. So actually, Lombardy could be destroyed as a minor power, even in the 1792 scenarios. And maybe I was false at some point and didn't conquer. Anyway, the end result in this scenario, as far as I can tell, is that all that territory becomes Austrian national territory now. I think that's it. We haven't taken Portugal yet, and it's not a victory phase, so we push into another year with Jourdan showing up as one of the many French commanders, some of which are hiding. What the fuck, dudes? Is that Genoa? Tuscany. Not yet gone. Okay. Those are reminder counters of taken places. Lombardy doesn't have a counter, so that's fine. Italy has then been stripped down to Piedmont and Genoa, I think, which is not very impressive. Is Piedmont part of Italy? It should be. No, it's its own neutral, so only Genoa is... That doesn't sound right. Oh, God. Lombardy, Romagna, Venezia. Kingdom of Italy's gone. That's why I didn't want to lose Lombardy. Oops. Well, another big fuck up. Yeah, because Genoa is part of France. Trying to keep this in alignment is part of the problem. Yeah, Genoa is part of France right now. What is Piedmont? Piedmont is part of France? No, it's its own independent territory. Why are there no Piedmontese troops? Or are there? I don't know. Coley was kicking around somewhere. He was my Piedmontese. Okay, I don't see him there. But I also don't see him here. I see this, which looks awfully... no, that's Naples. Okay, I don't see Coley here. I don't know what the fuck happened to him. Oh, is he part of the Army of Italy? Maybe. No? I am not seeing my my Piedmontese forces, which are kind of a yellowish brown color. Anywhere. So I don't know what happened to them. And it's so fucking hard to keep track of everything. But as far as I can tell, they should be French. And I don't know what happened to them. Put in the nothing pool. Okay, Kingdom of Italy is gone, and it's gone for good. La la la. This is what happens when, you can't understand all the game state that's being represented here and in the rules, etc. But, I think this isn't that unreasonable. The amount of confusion that this game provides you with, I think it's really hard to keep track of stuff like that. All right, all gone. Didn't think they were. Thought Thought they included Piedmont. I mean, the only place where I have a list of the three, Lombardy, Romagna, Venezia. Yeah. So taking Lombardy and Romagna killed it. And all this other territory, which I thought was kind of included in the Kingdom of Italy, or Kingdom of North Italy, I don't know what they actually called it, but yeah. What's up with Tuscany? The fuck? Tuscany is part of France. Yeah, I'm not sure I buy that. Like, I'm not absolutely. Again, I feel like these were officially part of Italy, but may have been administered more directly or something. I don't know. Maybe I'll have to do some research online, look in wikis and whatnot, because it doesn't make sense to me. But anyway, Kingdom of Italy's fucking gone. The hell with it. I think that makes it the end of the year. So we'll give the French and the coalition their naval counters back. Although this looks like it's going south real hard for the French. It really does. And people are going to have to reassess their situation based on that. Because there's people like Austria who are like, I really want Saxony if France is going down. I don't know. But yeah, we're going to have to think a lot harder about what happens with this kind of circumstance. This is what happens, though, when you let me play with the naval rules, right?